Welcome back, dear listener, to Poems and Potions. I am very excited about this month's poet. I mean, I say that. I'm always excited about the month's poets. But A.D. Detrick it's a different type of excitement. But before we get into all of that, first, just a little warning about this episode. We did this in a more unconventional way. Instead of being over Zoom like we had originally started doing, or in a recording studio, we just got together and decided to do the interview in a more casual setting. As such, the sound's going to be a little off. I tried to fix it as much as I can, but I have only been doing this for a year, and it's a little more technical skill than I think I possess. You don't care about that. Let's get to our poet. A.D. Detrick was born in Ohio, but grew up in St. Louis, Detroit, and Chicago. He started writing and performing poetry in Chicago in 1991, in the early days of Poetry Slam. From 91 to 96, he was a regular performer at the world-famous Green Mill, and hosted his own open mic show at Chicago's Bop Shop from 92 to 95. During that period, he also wrote and performed 2 one-man shows, as well as multiple stage plays and screenplays. After taking a brief 26-year break from writing, he wrote and performed his first new poem in 2022. The next year, he started regularly writing and reading around Columbus. He has since had features with Streetlight Guild, Poetry Cauldron, and won the inaugural Weirding Shakespeare performance event. When he's not doing poetry, he sings in 3 different bands and hangs out with his wife and kids, all of whom are intimidatingly good writers in their own right. One other thing you should know, we thought we recorded half an hour of the interview before we realized we were not. So as we jump in here, it is just after we realized our mistake and tried to restart to get back into it. It's a fun time. I hope you enjoy the interview as much as I enjoyed being there for it. Interviewing AD with me, by the way, is another wonderful guest, co-interviewer Zach Hanna. All right, enough talking. Let's get into it.
Now I'm recording. Now we're getting on. We'll just reframe the first story. We'll start it right here all right. So origin story, and I'll even tie it into Columbus, Ohio, even though I grew up outside of Chicago. One of the big moments to focus me on, I want to be a writer, was at the time, like I said, I would get obsessed with stories, and I would want to be like the person. Well, once I realized that, then I was like, I want to be like writers. Like, I want to be, I didn't want to just write like the writer. I wanted to live like the writer. And so I used to come to Columbus once a year. I had a friend of mine who, his dad and my dad were best friends growing up. I've known him my whole life, and he and I used to just get together about once a year and get in all sorts of trouble. We would just, and we were those kind of kids that would just try and out-party each other for 24, 48, 36 hours, something like that. And I came to Columbus, and he and I were just running wild, and he was at Ohio State, and we went to the old SBX, the Student Book Exchange, where you bought textbooks. And I was walking around, and I saw 7 Plays by Sam Shepard, and the book, and I didn't know Sam Shepard was a writer. I knew him because he was in The Right Stuff, which was like a movie that I really liked, and I just knew him as an actor. Didn't know he was a writer, and something about that book cover, I had to have that book, but I didn't have any money, so I took the book, and then as I was going to the thing, there was a book about Jack Kerouac, and it was the picture of Jack Kerouac standing in front of the kettle of fish, the famous picture, and something about that, I was like, I gotta have these 2 books, and so I wrote a bad check. I intentionally wrote a bad check because I knew, I'm like, I'm in Chicago, they'll never find me. And so I wrote a bad check. I had the books. I went back to Chicago. I read them, and that was when I was like, oh, I want to be a writer. Like I want to be like Jack Kerouac. I want to be and Sam Shepard. And so I started writing plays and one-man shows and poetry because I wanted to be like those guys. And in fact, I wanted to be so much like Jack Kerouac that I had applied to go to truck driving school. So I'd flunked out of college. I didn't have anything going for me. I had applied to go to truck driving school, and I had gotten a company to pay to send me to truck driving school. And I was supposed to go to truck driving school in like 3 weeks. I was going to go to Iowa. It's like you go to truck driving school in Iowa. And I was supposed to go to and I went to the Green Mill. So I'd gone to the Green Mill right before. It was like, well, I'm leaving town, so I'm going to go to the Green Mill. And that was the night I went to the Green Mill. The Chicago team had just won the second international slam. I went to the Green Mill, and I went, oh no, I'm sticking around Chicago. I'm going to be a writer. And that was how it turned for me. And so that was the origin story moment, you know. So I apologize, SBX, if anyone hears this, because I probably still owe you $20, but.
So wait, was Jack Kerouac? I don't know anything about Jack Kerouac. I'm a very bad literary person. Mm-hmm. Was he a truck driver?
No, but he just traveled around. So yeah, On the Road was just about him, and they would just travel around everywhere. And so my thought was, yeah, it was a brilliant thought. Because I thought, oh, well, I'll just get a job as a truck driver, and I'll travel all around it. I'll see all sorts of people. And now I know some truck drivers. I realize, oh, no, they just go from one stop to the other and one truck stop to the other, and everything looks exactly the same. And it's nowhere near as romantic as Jack Kerouac. So I made a better decision to stay in Chicago and become a writer.
I think the track you chose was the right one.
Yeah, much better path.
Yeah, I was a truck driver for about 6 months.
Yeah.
2003. Yeah, no, it wasn't.
No.
You had mentioned before that in the previous non-recording that the more, and you alluded to it at the beginning of this one, that the more that you would get absorbed into a story, the more that you would get absorbed into like any like level of narrative about occupation you would want to you would want to be it. And it's so interesting that the thing that flipped you over is you wanted to be like the writer, or whatnot. But I will say that a quality about your work that almost everybody talks about behind your back is that you envelop it's easy to sit inside your work. Like a lot of the times it's a poem is an object that I'm seeing from afar, even if it's being performed. It's over here, and I'm observing it. It's really easy to sit inside your poetry.
Oh.
And it feels immersive, and it always has felt immersive. So it's really interesting to see that your driving force was immersion.
Yeah.
And it's really telling.
Yeah.
From at least my point of view.
Oh, that's cool.
I like that.
Yeah.
No, I didn't think about that. That's a good point, though. That's a very good point.
Now, as soon as you had started talking about the whatever occupation or whatever lifestyle that the main character, or at least was being portrayed in the book, as soon as you started talking about that, I was like, well, Jesus, that's what you do to people. You definitely draw us into the world, and it's definitely easier to sit with your logic than it is to sit with my own logic sometimes. So
I think some of what that is, is that the writing for me, and you asked earlier when I wasn't recording, you asked earlier, like, what brought me back. So I spent about 26 years where I didn't write. I mean, I wrote a little bit here and there, and I tried a couple times, but I just couldn't get anything really to work. And I think part of what the process coming back to this was dealing with a lot of my own codependency and my own people-pleasing kind of behaviors and how much it robbed me of myself. But growing up, I didn't know I had emotions. So like when Charity and I first got together, she would ask me all the time, she would, "What are you feeling?" And I would get so angry because I was like, I don't know what I'm feeling. Right now I'm angry because you just asked me, what am I feeling? Because I never knew. Like I literally didn't understand that I had emotions. I knew I could be happy and no one would be upset if I was happy. At least not all the time. But most everything was just confusing to me and would turn into anger. And I didn't know that anger wasn't an emotion. You know, I didn't realize that it was a result of something else. And I just thought, oh, I'm just a person who's angry all the time. And when she first met me, we moved in together, and it was like she realized, like, oh my God, this man is moving a media play store into our apartment. Because I brought cases and cases of cassette tapes and VHS movies and just books, and that's what I brought with me.
Alphabetical.
All alphabetical, yes, all alphabetical. Like everything was very organized because it was so important to me. And I realized much later in life that, like, oh, that's how I learned emotions. Like that's how I didn't know what I was feeling, but I could experience it through someone else's art. And so a lot of the wanting to live out that stuff for me was wanting to be in touch with the feelings those things gave me. And so a lot of the art that I do now is more about me just trying to say, hey, here's this complex thing that I'm trying to feel, and let me try and explain it to you. And so it probably feels a little almost third party, so that it's a little safer for everybody, maybe. But yeah, that's a big part of how this all, because we were laughing about that earlier, that I went from like not writing for 2.5 decades to just writing so much and all the time and regularly
I realize I only get a certain scope of what you write. Like I only see a narrow slice of what you put on paper or text to screen or what have you. I do know that everything that I've heard from you, whether it's you talking in discussion or your poetry, I've heard your presentation at least once. All of it seems to be this style that now if we're being honest, is like being lauded as genius level with Hanif Abdurraqib. Everything you speak seems like a poetic essay. It's not an essay. It's not a poem. Everything is poetry with a purpose and intent that you set out to do and succeed by the end. And it is daunting how well you turn everything you touch into that.
I don't do compliments well, but I'll take that one. But I definitely, so one of the big changes from now, or one of maybe just the advantage of being older, is I always start thesis first. So it's when I write, I know where I'm trying to go, because I'm trying to answer the question for myself. So I think when I was young, I didn't do it all the time when I was young, but I was a little more willing to, let's see where this goes, or let's see what I'm trying to say. I'm older. I'm feeling the march of time, much differently. And also, I feel like I wasted a lot of time. And so I'm trying to, when I'm writing thesis first. And I'm writing with, okay, what am I trying to figure out in my head? And that's really where I'm starting. I don't ever just sit down and see what comes out anymore. I don't know if that's good or bad.
No, it works.
Okay.
It has definitely been working from what I've seen.
So.
Me and you in a conversation at another point, I talked about Chad the Bird.
Yeah.
And I the more and more I think about it, Chad the Bird does comedic essays that he reads through a bird puppet to a crowd.
At the Green Mill.
And they're short. They're like 5 minute to 7 minute. There's orations. It's very fast paced, witty about one little tiny slice of topic. And he's very over the top, and it's overdone. The end. Chad the Bird. All of the space that he doesn't cover, because he's just covering just nonstop. It's just comedy and poignance is all he's after. He's after comedy and poignance, comedy and poignance, comedy and poignance. You're filling in literally all the space that he doesn't cover. You're covering and I know it sounds like I'm giving a big compliment, but I've heard a bit of your work. I've read your work. You cover a lot of the human experience and emotion and how we perceive what has already happened. You're big about what has already happened and how we perceive it and how that can change what's going on. And to see things like that succeed in the world or whatnot, it's given me hope. Stuff like Chad the Bird and you, that's what the world needs right now, in my opinion. There's people who are covering this scope of existence, and he's doing comedy and you're doing everything else.
Yeah.
And you're funny in the meantime. I've heard you be funny. Quite a bit.
I can write some veggie tail porn if I need to.
Veggie tail porn. Like, I agree. Everything that you have performed so far, I've absolutely loved. I know, like, from my perspective, a lot of it for me is the emotion you put into it. Because everyone has their own style. And with Louise, she talked about like the MFA voice. If that's what I think it is. You are one of the few, Zach and Sue are included in this, unique, who has, well, your own unique style. And yours is, you put the emotion into it.
Awkward earnestness.
It's the sincerity and frankness of it, because you're not speaking in a lot of abstracts. You're a very concrete language person, even though you're very poetic and you use metaphors very well. And it's the earnest, like you were saying, the sincerity of it. It literally pours out in the performance of it. And I hear your voice when I read your work too. It's so strong. People say that about strong poets or whatever. You're amongst them.
Yeah.
Effort.
That's exactly it. We're going to have to go to the Green Mill at some point, because now I need to see this person who stole my idea before I had my idea.
Scott Woods was telling me that I didn't know they were still doing it once a month, but yeah, they're doing it still once a month, and I would like to go back. I would like to go back, if only because the last time I was there, it was just a weird time. So I had stopped going to the Green Mill. I had stopped reading. I finally decided to go to college and get, myself together. And I'd stopped performing and reading because I basically did a bachelor's degree in 3 semesters. So I was taking a bunch of stuff. I was working full time. I was writing a movie that was just, ugh. But no, we're not even gonna talk about it. It was terrible. But I was doing all this stuff, so I wasn't going to the Green Mill anymore. And it was right at the time that things started to change in Poetry Slam. So she came to Chicago for a weekend, and I was like, well, I've got to take you to the Green Mill. I mean, it's Mecca, so I have to take you. And it felt like a bad open mic at, the Chuckle Hut. It really didn't feel like poetry. It was very interesting because we've talked about Shappy, and Shappy kind of came onto the scene and completely changed the game, not for the better. And I do not say that to degrade his legacy. I don't say that because then years later I hear everybody talking about what a genius he is, and I had to realize that, you know, Shappy came onto the scene in Chicago, and he kicked my ass every time I slammed against him. And I mean, he kicked my ass bad. And he was very funny, and he was very weird, and he was very unique because he was somewhere between. Chicago's a town that at that time particularly, you had poets, you had improv comedians, and you had stand-up comedians, and never the three shall meet. And Shappy was kind of right in between all three. He had elements of all three, and I think as a result, he didn't fit in any of those places. And he came in and he changed the game so dramatically that everybody thought, oh, the only way to win poetry is just to do bad comedy. And we went back, and it was kind of depressing, to be honest with you. I was like, I tried to explain to her, like, well, this isn't really what it used to be like at all. And so yeah, it'd be fun to go back and just see if it's, you know, got a little bit of the old spirit still left to it, because it was a weird time in the mid-90s. It was a lot of the Green Mill, especially in some of the bigger slams, it was all just bad comedy night, as opposed to good poetry.
Ironically, I would kind of like to see what the bad comedy nights look like too.
It really wasn't as exciting. Like Shappy was an interesting guy. At least you went like, what am I watching here? Like you're almost curious, like, what exactly am I watching? And seeing people's reaction to him, and seeing the breadth of people's reaction to him. There was no reaction that he wasn't going to get from somebody, you know, whereas, you know, I might get people's reaction here and other people get this reaction. Some people hated him, some people worshipped him, some people, you know, in the end, he's a good poet. Kick my ass every time. But a lot of people tried to imitate him and could not. They just couldn't do what he did. They just couldn't do what he did. And so it turned the scene in a really weird way for a while. And so I'd like to go back just to see if, you know, maybe it's not as
recovered.
That my last time at the Slam wasn't a bit of a sad trombone, you know.
Small aside, is Shappy toured on Lollapalooza with a poem called Butterfly.
Yeah. So that was So it was first or second Lollapalooza. They invited a bunch of us to come on stage because it was in Chicago. So they had a stage and a bunch of people. We went and we performed, and it was okay. But I think it was the girls from L7 like fell in love with Shappy, and they were like, "He's coming with us." and yeah, he had that thing, but it caused some weird havoc in Chicago, because it just kind of changed the way slam was, and so yeah, I wouldn't mind going back at some point.
A lot going on in my head.
Mm-hmm.
Can we talk about what the Green Mill was one more time? Because I don't think that was recorded.
Oh yeah, that's right. So Green Mill, bar owned by a guy named Dave Gemolo, who owned a number of bars around the north side of Chicago. Dave originally owned a bar called the Get Me High, which was kind of a famous dive bar in Chicago. And two guys, Terry Jacobus and Mark Smith.
So what?
Thank you. They started this thing called Poetry Slams. These are like working class South Side Chicago guys. And they started a thing called Poetry Slam, which, I mean, what a great concept. It's like, you're going to read poem. Who's it going to be judged by? People who know nothing about poetry. So
the drunker the better.
The drunker the better. And what's the scoring going to be? Scoring's going to be crazy. It was kind of a perfect Chicago take on poetry, because Chicago had, on one hand, the University of Chicago, which is, I mean, an absolute genius den. It's a great writing program. It's an amazing university. And, you know, a number of other really strong academic universities around there that had writing, but it also, Chicago has a real working class, Nelson Algren, Studs Terkel kind of working class storytelling vibe to the writers. And Mark really just embraced that, and he brought poetry to it. And I'm telling you, in the 90s, the academic poets hated the slam poets. So one of the great stories. But the Green Mill would, every Sunday night, would have the Uptown Poetry Slam. So Uptown Poetry Slam would be, the first hour would be open mic, second hour would be the feature, and the third hour would be the slam. And it was, it was a fantastic place. I would go, I guess we didn't record that. So the first time I went, right after I turned 21. Second time I went was the night that the Chicago team won the second International Poetry Slam. At that time, I think there were only 3 teams. I think it was just Boston, New York, Chicago, but Ann Arbor might have had a team at that point. But there were only 3 teams, but Chicago won it. Lisa Boscani, who later became a friend of mine, she came in second that year to Patricia Smith, and then she later won the individual award the next year. And so, yeah, they were Green Mill was just kind of the home base of poetry in Chicago, and I think I described it earlier as like Yankee Stadium. It was like Yankee Stadium of poetry, because all the poets who were great in New York would want to come to Chicago and read at the Mill. All the poets who were great in Boston would want to come and they would read at the Mill, and it was a community, so they would have generations of poets. So Terry Jacobus, Mark Smith, thank you, and Dean Hacker were kind of the first generation, and then Lisa and David Kadesky and Cheryl Trick and Paula Killen were kind of what we used to call the second generation, and then my generation was like the third generation, and we would sit in the back corner of the bar. It was called the slime corner, because that's where, like, it was us. We were all a bunch of alcoholics, and then like alcoholic regulars at the bar, and we would all just sit in the back of the bar, and it was great. And I would go to the Green Mill every week, and I would write a poem at the Green Mill during the open mic, and I would read it during the slam, and then I would try and give it to a girl, and they never cared. But but that was like every Sunday for, I don't know, 4 or 5 years for me.
Can we touch back though, because it didn't get recorded? The first time that you went and actually performed that night that the Chicago team had just won.
Yeah.
You won that one, didn't you?
I won that one.
Yeah.
So what was so great about that night was I was too stupid to know, like, we call them debutantes, the person who's reading for the first time. In the Green Mill, they're called virgins. So you're a virgin if you've never read at the Green Mill. If you've never read anywhere, you're a virgin. So I was too dumb to know that as a virgin, you don't sign up for the slam, because I had only been there one time before. So I signed up for the slam, and Mark was one of the all-time great hosts. So he was very nice about it, but he also set the stage like, don't let this son of a bitch off the hook. And what I remember, this is one of those chasing the dragon moments that you have for the rest of your life. What I remember was, I don't remember the poem. The poem was just all about, being messed up. I flunked out of college. All of my friends were moving on, and they were in college, and they were having a great time, and I was just miserable all the time and lonely and just doing way too many bad things for myself. And the poem was just about that. The poem was just about how much I had screwed up my life, but I wanted to remain hopeful. And all I remember was the last line of the poem. And I never remember any of my own stuff, but I remember this moment. The last line of the poem was, as I head down this road, I'm grateful for the sunlight and the absence of anything in my rearview mirror. And I said that line, and it was silent for like a second. And then you just hear one guy go, "Fuck yeah!" And then the place erupts. And I've chased that moment for 35 years. And it was great. And it was like, and it erupted. And then, yeah, I won the slam, and the slam team was sitting at the booth right next to the stage. And I had gone back, I was sitting at the bar, and I won the slam. And the prize was $10, right? But for me, it was great because I win $10, and then $10 goes on the bar, and I got 3 more beers at that point. And they came over, and they said, it was Lisa Biscani came over, and she's like, "You got to come sit with us." And that night, they introduced me. There was a newspaper called Letter X. Letter X was a poetry newspaper in Chicago. That's how much poetry was going on in Chicago. There was like a newspaper. I think it was bi-weekly. Like a newspaper. And it was, here's all the readings that are going on. Here's all the stuff that's going on in the community. And they gave me a copy of Letter X, and they're like, everything that, every place you can read is in there, because there was a reading at that point every night in Chicago. And they just encouraged me, and I was so desperate for validation at that point in my life that it was a really great thing for me. So maybe a terrible thing, I don't know.
This gives me a little more perspective as far as, because in previous interviews we talked about, like, is Columbus a poetry city?
Mm-hmm.
And then slam. So first of all, thank you. You've given me specifically more understanding of all of this dynamic. Even though I've been in it for almost 2 years, there's so much history.
There is.
And so then you said that you took a 26-year break, and then you started writing again at the Hot Times Festival in 2022. Was it the high points? Am I missing anything?
No, that's it. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
And then the rest from there is present day tense history.
Yeah.
And that is where we're going to end today's interview. However, before we go, I have a little treat. AD was willing to provide me with a copy of one of his poems that he had pre-recorded, and I wanted to share that with you. So, please enjoy.
In honor of Valentine's Day, do you want a cover of a Pablo Neruda love poem or a sad original about love's truck stop? I can see Michael stocking end caps through the plate glass windows of the Love's truck stop. It's almost sunrise in the shadow of the highest point in Ohio. Parked at the far side of the parking lot, among the weary, the domestic refugees, the inebriates, all sleeping in their locked cars with a pilgrim's peace that people like us, people like them, can only find away from home. Some nights I'll sit in my car for hours just offering myself over and over to its marquee name in giant yellow letters on the front of the building. Loves. Michael and I are accustomed to seeing each other at this hour. He remembers me because of a black bandana I sometimes wear. I thought you were some kind of biker, he once told me. He knows my regular purchases: 2 moon pies, raw almonds, a 24-ounce black coffee, and a Diet Coke. He no longer asks if I want a bag. We are near a remote highway in a quiet county. Even though the world is asleep outside these windows, Michael spends his nights in the numb denial of vulnerability. At 21, he has seen the shaky death end of a gun twice. Every pair of headlights, every open door at 4 a.m. is a threat. The gratitude he feels when the wearied gray scowl at the door reveals itself as someone he knows is simply the glory of fresh breath as my boot lifts from his throat, a rendition relief born from the certainty that nobody who regularly buys moon pies will ever do any real harm. He greets me with a half smile and a friendly hey, not the required welcome to loves. This moment feels like my sad autobiography. He has come to know me enough to acknowledge me to the point that I am no longer welcome to love. I wonder if things would be different between us if he knew that I can no longer sleep. I want to tell him that I come to this place because of my grandparents. I want to tell him that I can't quite see the cemetery where they lay from here, or the house beyond that hill where they always made me feel safe. I want to tell him that it's been over 20 years since I've been in that house, but that I spend my nights here watching the blink of the obstruction light atop the water tower. Oh, I spent the first 30 years of my life sleeping on their couch, watching that same blinking light blink until I'd peacefully fall asleep. I want to tell him how everything seems to be falling apart, and all I can do is think about it and think about it and think about it, to the point that I no longer trust myself the way he trusts me. And so I get in my car, and maybe I can't see the cemetery where they lay or the house that always made me feel safe, but they reach me here, like overhearing a favorite song being played on the radio of a passing car. I want to tell him how somehow this proximity, somehow this nostalgia, somehow this mythology has convinced me that I can't hurt myself when I'm feeling this memory. And I want to craft this moment into an epiphany. I want the foundation between us to be more than sand and temporary good fortune. And anything we share exists in our unwillingness to disrupt each other. I want to remain the chaos unerupted in his life, and I want to tell him how scary it is to feel like the only thing keeping me safe is $13 of LED lighting and the insomniac's delusion that it's a sin to hurt myself under the word love. But that's not who we are. There's a difference between pulling someone to safety and not shaking them when they are on the edge. We are moon pies and casual hellos. We will not fall tonight, but that's all we can promise each other. Nothing more. And as the sun rises over the highest point in Ohio, I always start my car with the same prayer. Can this be the last time I need this, God? Also, please take care of Michael.
And that is where we are officially stopping for today. A special thanks to AD Detrick for being so accommodating with trying to get everything together during this very busy time of the year. Super special thanks to Zach for being my co-interviewer. And most of all, a humongous thank you to you, our listeners, for the slightly strange way that we did this month's poet. We will be back in 2 weeks for the second half of AD's interview, as well as another poem. So, until then, try to stay cool and be well. Poems and Potions is produced by Mandar Kath, Marquita Byers, and R. Taryn Lear. Music and sound support provided by A.D. Detrick and Charity Detrick. If you like what we do, please consider supporting us on Patreon under R. Taryn. Until next time, bye-bye.